Hello. I would like to welcome everybody to this webcast. Thank you so much to our panelists that you'll hear from soon, and thanks everybody who's out there already listening to us. We have something like 400 plus people online right now watching the live stream on YouTube. My name is Faith Rothberg, and I'm the CEO of College Recruiter. At College Recruiter, we believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career. And we are basically a job search site where employers advertise their job openings with us. Today, we're going to be discussing adapting your internships for the world of COVID-19, unfortunately. And with me, I have 6 guests. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves right now. And then as far as the YouTube chat goes, feel free to ask questions. And I will start with some questions for the panelists, but I am going to then look to the audience for questions as well. So Susan, why don't we start with you? We can kind of go around.
Terrific. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Faith and Stephen, for hosting this event. My name is Susan Kennedy, and I'm the Director of Internships and Career Development at Regis College in Massachusetts, not to be confused with Regis University in Denver, although there have been some crossovers with that. We are a relatively small school, but we have a big reach in that we serve a lot of first-generation college students, a lot of diverse students, and I think that all students are concerned about these times, but there are pockets of students who could use more help than others. And I look forward to the conversation.
Great. Grace, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Grace Cutney. I'm the Associate Director for Career Advising and Technology at Lawrence University. Lawrence University is in Appleton, Wisconsin. We're a small liberal arts institution of about 1,500 students.
Great. And Pam, how about you?
Hi, I'm Pam Baker, the CEO of Journeus, and I would echo the thanks to Faith and Stephen for hosting today's discussion. So at Journeus, we work with leaders and teams and students on adaptive communication with a focus around how can you connect and collaborate and motivate in any situation, and particularly useful right now amidst the distress that folks are going through, and making sure that the communication that we're using, the words that we're using, are allowing folks to actually connect rather than throwing each other into distress. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Robert, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Robert Schindel. I'm President and CEO of Intern Bridge. We are a research and consulting firm that works with both higher ed and employers to develop meaningful internship experiences. We do so through our total internship management workshops, which are now moving online. So we're really excited about that. And again, Stephen, Faith, thanks so much for having this. And it's an important topic we got going today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Jill, you want to go next?
Sure. Again, thank you. My name is Jill Chapman. I work with a company called Insperity, and we are a business performance advising organization working largely with our small and medium-sized businesses around the country. So these times are really impactful on our customer base. And my job within the organization is as a senior performance consultant. I work with our recruiting group, and most specifically, I work with our intern program team. And so, yeah, so we play kind of both ends. We're consulting with our clients, we're working with our internal corporate needs. We have about 3,200 Insperity corporate employees, but again, our number of co-employed individuals reaches into the millions because of our work with our small and medium-sized companies. So we've got it from every angle, and our own internship program on the line as well.
Yeah, and I'd just like to mention too that College Recruiter, as a small business, is an Insperity customer, and I can validate that they're going crazy at Insperity right now because they need to inform all these small and medium-sized businesses what we should be doing with our employees and all these new acts like Family Leave Act and all those different things. And so they've been great at communicating a lot and creating a lot of webinars. But you probably all have experienced some of that in different ways. So anyway, thank you for that, Jill. And,
Thank you.
and it's nice that we can hear from kind of both sides of the table with you with that. Kristen, you want to go?
Yeah, I'd love to. My name is Kristen Rigney, and I am the manager of our university recruiting and internship program at New Relic. So New Relic is a tech company. We monitor the front and back end of websites and mobile applications, basically any way a customer would digitally interact with your platform, to make sure there's no lags, that nothing's happening, that you don't get that spinning wheel of death. We have about 2,100 employees, and that is within the US and internationally as well. We're headquartered in San Francisco, but I'm based out of Portland, Oregon.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, so let's begin our discussion with the first question that I'd really like everybody to answer. So maybe we can go around the opposite direction, starting with Kristen. It is, how should employers be communicating with their interns, even if they don't yet know what they're going to do about their internship programs? Should they wait? Should they get out there? Should they explain that, everybody's uncertain, but we're here for you? Where do you begin?
Yeah, so I think right now it's important to understand that this is new for everyone. We've never gone through this as employers. Our students, our interns have never gone through this before. So I think it's important to realize that they're very understanding right now. They're very empathetic. Yes, they're stressed about their personal situation, but they understand that we may not have every answer for them. At New Relic, what we did is we have not delayed or canceled any of our internships. We're in a pretty good position right now. So we wanted to make sure that our interns who are dealing with a lot of stress, just in their school has gone virtual, they're moving back home, a lot of them, that we wanted to make sure that we were quelling their fears and that they knew that they were still solid for the summer with us. It's going to look very different. Our internship program is going remote. And so what we did is put together kind of an FAQ or Q&A that went along with kind of our announcement that they should be prepared to not relocate to where the office was. Our biggest fear was that they would secure housing and plane tickets and everything else months in advance of them coming out. So we sent them a document that was looked over by our chief people officer and our communications team. And then we only have 29 interns. So we called each of them individually. So between me and one of the coordinators on my team, we divided up the list and just called them to say, can we answer any of your questions? Let me talk to you a little bit about the logistics. If you just want to complain and vent about COVID-19 and how much you hate being indoors, I'm here to listen to that too. So we just wanted to make sure that we were there for them as a support mechanism.
Great. Awesome. Jill?
Yeah, so I kind of echo what Kristen talks about, and it's a lot about grace, right? We all need to give each other some grace during this because nobody knows really what to do or how to react. Just like I talked to managers of organizations just about now having the remote workforce, when we're all remote, you have to over communicate, right? You have to communicate twice as much as you normally would. And so we started those communications last week. We're doing a combination. We're trying to touch them every way that we can think of, by phone, by text, by email, and in just different delivery patterns over the next few weeks, just to stay in touch and let them know that we're still working through things. We haven't decided, depending on what happens, if we're going to go remote. We're still in that quandary of, are we going to go remote or are we going to go, come back to campus? Our curriculum is really built around having them live with us and sitting with their mentors and doing those sorts of things. So it's going to, on the back channels, we're all scrambling to try to figure out what platforms can we use? How can we turn some of this learning into a remote situation and open up channels so that they can still work with their mentor as closely as they could have if they were face-to-face or in real life. So we've got a lot of that going on, but we're trying to be as transparent as possible with our interns and potential interns to say, We don't know what this is going to look like. Just be with us, walk alongside us, and we'll all figure it out together. We're trying not, though, to also build up their hopes of something that may not come to total fruition. It may look different. It may be a little shorter than what we thought it was going to be, or some things like that. And just trying to be generous with our communication so that they understand, and they know as soon as we know whatever changes are happening to the program. And I think at this point, that's all we can expect,
Yeah, that's great. Anything to reduce stress, I think, is really helpful for them in this lifetime right now. Pam, how about you?
Yeah, so I look at this situation and say EQ is going to play a big role right about now. And I would echo Jill's comment about communicate more than you think you need to. Some of the work that we've been doing is helping employers make sure that as they are communicating that message, and I would fully agree, to be really transparent, it's not a secret that most of us don't know what it's going to look like 3 months from now. So being open and honest about that, I think, is the right way to go. But making sure that that communication is meeting folks where they are, is not sending them into further distress. And how can we use the communication to students to, pull them in instead of pushing them away? We talk about the language that you use to charge their batteries and engage them rather than push them away. And I do think that employers have a real opportunity, quite frankly, whether they run their internship as originally planned or not, to create an ally with the students that they've been talking to. The way that they connect with them and move forward with them can, even for the companies that have to say, you know what, we just can't run our internships, they can still create advocates of those students that they've talked to when they communicate with them in an open, transparent way that actually, again, pulls them together rather than pushes them apart.
Great. Grace, do you want to kick in there with the university side of things?
Sure, I absolutely appreciate everything that the employers have been saying so far. I would 100% support as much transparency. As everybody's already noted, so many students are feeling anxious about so many other things. And this piece of whether or not an internship is happening and feeling like they're left in the dark when they're also isolated just isn't helping. So the more that employers can be transparent, be honest, as everybody has said so far, and even with some amount of timeline, and I think everybody understands that that's a moving target, but even to be able to say, we're hoping to have maybe more information in 2 weeks, but we'll get back to you. Even if that 2-week touch base is, we still don't know, at least it gives the students an opportunity to kind of put that thought on the back burner for 2 weeks. And then they're not worrying about it constantly or wondering, did I miss a call? Did I miss a Zoom? There's so many different pieces of technology that they're needing to check right now. And if they can just be told, okay, maybe in 2 weeks we might know more, and we'll send out another communication at that point, I think that can be really helpful.
Okay. And Robert, how about you?
Open, honest, transparent, empathetic are the 4, I think, watchwords. I think that we need to add one more, and that's individualized. So as Kristen was saying about calling each individual student, and I would go beyond that, not just call on the phone, do a face-to-face chat like this on FaceTime or whatever, so that there's that personal connection. So making it very individualized. The Chronicle of Higher Education this morning put out a collection of articles about, it's more written for professors engaging with students, but gosh, as I read through it, it's perfect for employers communicating with students. It's the same tactics about how do we relieve their stress? How do we communicate things that we don't know? How do we meet them where they are. And I think Pam mentioned, meeting students where they are, which is fantastic. But again, it was written for professors engaging in virtual online classes, but I think that we can draw a lot from that as employers and as higher education career services to, again, be empathetic, but individualized, understand that, hey, we don't have all the answers, and that's cool, but we're going to try to find something out. And if you'd like, we can put that white paper in the follow-up of this, and so there's a resource that everybody can kind of glean through. I do warn you, though, it's academic, but and kind of glean some of those things from it and say, okay, I'm an employer, how can I utilize this? I think you'll get a lot out of it.
Okay, cool. And Susan, did you want to add something too?
Pretty much everyone has covered it. I'm kind of in an unusual situation in that I have twins who are both members of the class of 2020. So I can speak personally to the stress and anxiety. But again, I think picking up that phone and reaching out to the students, everybody's looking for personal connections. And I think that's real. I think that would go a long way with students.
Yeah, that's great. So we actually got a question from the audience that goes along with this. And that is, how should students communicate with employers? Should they over communicate? While they're waiting to hear about their internships or that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys say, because like Susan, I also have a child in this cohort group, and he has an internship.
How many more times can you say this is terrible?
He has an internship for this summer and he's heard nothing, right?
Well, you know what?
The federal government, but whatever.
I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, Faith, but one of the things I think students who have written job offers and/or internships is reach out to the supervisor and say, hey, I get things are crazy right now. Is there anything I can be doing for you remotely? Okay, that shows motivation. It shows a lot. And let's face it, these students are better at remote tools than we are.
Yeah, Susan, to add on to that, I've had a number of conversations with folks over the last week. And one of the things I had suggested, yes, reach out to the employer. And also, and I also have twins. And so I remember when I was pregnant, just hang with me for a sec on this one. Somebody said to me, before you have your twins, create a list of the things that you will want people to help you with when they come over, so that when somebody says, how can I help you? You're going to be too sleep deprived to actually be able to answer the question. And you can say, I want you to do numbers 3, 4, and 5 on the list. I think when employers can think about that and say, hey, what kind of mini projects, whether it's a micro internship or something else, would we benefit from in having students engage in? And as a student, what you can do is look at what's going on for this organization. What can you hypothesize about some of the challenges that they're facing, and come to that employer and say, hey, just wanted to check in, would love to kind of get a sense of where things stand. And if you don't, here are a couple things that I thought I might be able to do for you. I mean, what a great way to show up and provide value proactively and show to the employer that you are thinking about what's going on in their industry and their company before they even come to you.
That is huge, because I came from corporate America as well. And if I had an intern that, followed those steps, I know I would be very impressed.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to, I don't think we should paint some Pollyanna view of this thing, but at the same time, this really is a golden opportunity for students to step it up and say, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take the chance. I'm going to be a risk taker, and I'm going to reach out to that supervisor, and I'm going to say, hey, here are 3 things that I thought about. I mean, and they don't have to be, huge, life-changing thing. It could be just 3 very simple things that I can help with. Do you have any other suggestions? I'm really excited, and really show that kind of grit that we've been talking about in higher ed for the last, dozen years or so, and helping our students to develop that grit and these career readiness competencies. What a great time to showcase those things.
Yeah.
You know, it is, but and Grace, perhaps you could jump in here too. Young people need help with that. They really do. They are afraid. We all know they're afraid to pick up the phone.
Yes.
So to the extent, I mean, just so you know, these are all great ideas. And I know in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be working a lot one-on-one with students to help them phrase this, to help them approach the employer.
Well, one of the things that I've been saying, and this is way before any of the COVID issue rose up, but helping students to begin to imagine themselves as professionals, giving themselves permission to do that. And I think that's a space that for many students, they're not tumbling to that permission giving until well after graduation. And so I'm in my individual conversations with students, I'm regularly asking them to take that step for themselves, to say, yes, I am a professional already. And that's something that if you think of your own career, at what point did you say to yourself, I'm not pretending anymore? For some of us, we might still feel like we're pretending. Like, I'm just a big kid right now. So I think if all of us, and I think somebody else had mentioned this earlier, the notion of extending grace. Yes, I know that's my name, but for a lot of students, once they tumble to that, oh my goodness, this is just another human being. They're the employer, but they aren't the almighty employer. And I can just reach out to them as another human being who's going through a lot of tough stuff, and ask questions, just like I would to a professor or what I might do with a friend, that you can do the same things. But some of that requires a little bit of permission for themselves. It's not necessarily the employer giving them the permission, it's themselves giving themselves that permission. But that goes such a long way. And once they realize that, it's almost, and the power differential is equalized, a lot of students can take those next steps and the grit comes out because it's there. It's just really a matter of letting themselves go there in their head.
All right. One thing I'd like to add, and then move on to another question, kind of change it up a little bit, is that when Robert was talking, one of the things that Intern Bridge did was they contributed to a white paper from the University of Wisconsin, Madison. And I'd just like to give our audience the URL for that. You can find it at www.collegerecruiter.com/UW Madison COVID-19 report. And it is an overview on good ideas for how to look at moving from a in-person internship to how can we do things, move to online and remote. Just a good, really solid overview white paper. So feel free to download that. And
it's super laser beam focused. There's not a whole lot of fluff in there. It is not, it's not a novel. It is tactical bullet points. It's very straightforward.
It was very helpful, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
Great.
Appreciate that.
And the next question I wanted to ask was actually what are the short-term and long-term impacts on an employer's ability to recruit students if they end up rescinding offers? And Kristen, I think you had wanted to start with this one.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one thing to the last question. So one of the things that we did in our Q&A document that we sent out is we outlined kind of the questions that interns should come to the university programs team with, and then ones that their hiring managers would be able to field, because we didn't want them to going to their hiring managers and asking about housing stipends, and we didn't want them coming to us and asking us what codes they should be learning over the summer. So we made sure to outline that for them. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's great.
And then as far as like short and long-term ramifications, I think that especially in tech right now, we're doing a lot in the space of working with diverse organizations on campus. And that takes a lot of work. that takes a lot of relationship building over long periods of time. And it's not something that where you can just go on campus and partner with the LGBTQ plus community, or the people of color, or women in computer science, and gain that trust quickly. Like, it is a long game. And so it is one of those things that worries me sometimes when I think about, like, if we were in the place where we had to rescind offers, what has that damage done to those long-term relationships that we've started to build over time? And a lot of them are communities that already need to be able to have that trust in employers. And so if you've made them an offer and then you ghost them for an extended period of time with no communication, and then come back to them at the 11th hour and say, unfortunately, we're not able to do this for you, without any proactive communication in between, that's a scary place to be in, and one that's probably going to take a lot of damage control moving forward, with those populations. And it's going to take a long time to build that reputation back up on campus. And as we all know, college students talk. They tell their friends, they tell their family, they tell the person that walked their dog once when they were in 5th grade, they tell everybody. And I've already heard stories about companies that, somebody's girlfriend was supposed to fly out to New York to intern, and they have not heard anything from this major tech company. You bet that girl is telling everyone she knows, and her boyfriend is then telling everyone he knows. It's a scary place to be in, but you do have to look out for what your company can accommodate.
Yeah.
Well, to a certain extent, though, I think it also depends on how it's handled. How it's communicated. Again, the more personal, as we were saying earlier, the more transparent. These students are bright. They know what's going on. And, I think if he stepped there as well. But I think that, having that empathy with the students would go a long way to continue to maintain that trust.
I would fully agree. The how is more important than the what. Letting folks know, even when it's an I don't know, is invaluable. And I would argue that there will be disappointment when people have to cancel their internships, no question about it. And how employers handle this and how the communication goes to their prospective interns, as you say, Kristen, college students will talk. And so you can use that to your benefit when you send them a note, when you pick up the phone, when you get on FaceTime and let them see you in your real world environment, so that they know that you are a real human being too, and create that connection with them. I would argue that you have an opportunity to pull them in the future, whether that's for a mid-semester project or internship, or next year down the line. Susan's right. These folks are smart. They get what's going on, and that they also get that there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and being honest about that and letting them know that here's when I think I'll know, and here's when I'm going to get in touch with you. And if I don't, here's why. Letting them, understand all of that, I think, is invaluable right now.
Yeah, I think, I think there's two parts of the original question, but, kind of piggybacking on what Pam's talking about, it's sort of like when we have to decline a candidate for an internship at the get-go, right? Like, irrespective of COVID and all that sort of thing. There's a lot of interns that apply. We only hire a small amount of the pool. And so even how we let those people, those declined candidates, because it's no for right now, it's not no forever, it's just no for this particular opportunity, and building, continuing to build those relationships and grooming that relationship with the university as well in the same breath, if you will. So I think it has a lot of that flavor. It looks like we have to decline people all the time, but it's how we do it that continues that relationship and keeps that relationship open. And to Kristen's point, it is about the relationship with the university, because it takes a long time to build some of this stuff, but trust can be lost in an instant, right? And that's what it's really about. But thinking from the employer perspective, the short-term ramifications, most of us are using this as a supply line, a pipeline into next year's talent pool, right? And so if we're thinking about not doing it at all, we need to think about what's that going to look like in 2021, what's that going to look like in 2022 if we've cut this, we've cut our pipeline short. We don't know what 2021 is going to look like, economic wise, but I think we have to think about, why do we have the internship program in the first place? And think about, what if we abort right now? How is that going to look for our hiring in the future when we've lost this pool, or at least a small part of the pool up front? So before somebody just throws in the towel, I think they really do need to think about those short-term and long-term consequences of aborting the program.
Absolutely. And you guys made it very clear too that, as an employer, it's your brand, right? Too. It's your brand about, are you a good place to work? How do you treat your employees? And it's the beginning of that. I just wanted to point out that we're at halfway through already. I knew this hour was going to fly by. So I just want to remind all the panelists, try to be a little shorter and crisper so people get more in. And so we can answer more questions, because we're getting questions from the audience as well.
Hey, Faith, one last thing on that last point. Back in 2008, when we had the recession, too many employers canned their internship initiatives as a cost-saving measure. And what we saw in 11, 12, 13, as the economy started to rebound and rebuild, many of those companies didn't have internship programs because the individual that was in charge of it was no longer part of the organization. We can learn lessons from that. And if we, crisis is a great opportunity for innovation. And if employers can take that step back and say, you know what, those mistakes in 2008, it took us 4, 5, 6 years to rebuild those relationships, that trust, those connections that were lost. I think that puts us in a different place. And it says, hey, well, okay, instead of throwing in the towel, I love that, Jill. Instead of throwing in the towel, let's figure out a new way to deliver and keep these relationships, utilizing some of the tactics that we've already talked about today.
Yeah, no, that's great, Robert. Thanks for adding that. It looks like in relationship to, or our next question that's kind of in relationship to it is, what kind of support can career service offices provide to the employers? How can we, those career service people in the audience, how can we serve as the liaison for communication and information sharing between the employers and the students? Is that something that employers would want?
Well, I think that depends on the employer right now. And this is unprecedented times, okay?
Absolutely. Oh, you froze, Susan.
Placement sites, and let them know I'm here. If you need help taking this internship and making it into a remote modality, we can help you with that. So in that way, and I'm also trying to pump out some content for employers.
Yeah, okay.
And, as a former career center director myself, and still kind of work a lot in that space, again, I've been advising people that I've talked with that are in career services to be proactive, to reach out, to send that email, to say, hey, let's get on a Zoom chat. Let's do something. What can I do to help you? And really kind of putting ourselves out there in a different way. And there again, when like the white paper that I was talking about, the Chronicle put out, could help employers craft those messages and understand maybe where students are, and because we should in career services have our finger on the pulse of what's going on with students, how they're feeling, because I'm sure that we've gotten hundreds, if not thousands, of emails from students saying, what's going on? Yes. So we can communicate that and be that bridge to the employer and help them craft messages and, really crack on them to say, hey, listen, you need to be proactive. You need to communicate open, honest, transparent, empathetically. Instead of being passive and waiting for them to call us, we should be reaching out to them.
And so what, Jill or Kristen, what would you want to get from your, the colleges where you have built these strong relationships that, you know, you're afraid of having issues with if you were to rescind your internships or whatever? What could they do to help you? They've pointed out some good ideas. Anything else that you can think of that you would want them to do?
I think right now, since we're in a different position where we're not rescinding, so we don't need kind of that damage control on
Sure.
campus. Most of the communications I've received from our partner universities have just been about like their career fair going virtual, and all of our internship positions are filled and we don't really need to do that. So I almost have them on an auto delete right now, which sounds bad, but like I'm not really reading the emails because I'm like, I don't need to do a virtual career fair. But it would be nice come summer if there was some kind of like featured newsletter or something about internships and employers who were able to continue that, just to like highlight the fact that, you know, we were able to weather the crisis. That would be nice to help us in that reputation building on campus, especially, you know, we have some campuses that we're just not well known at. So to have that highlight would be great. But beyond that, we don't really lean too much on the career services side to implement and communicate our internship program.
With your own internships, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the same sort of thing. It's been interesting. The universities that have reached out already and those that haven't, because we haven't heard from some of them, you know, beyond the maybe cursory email that says, hey, we're all working remote now. But not a lot of, hey, Jill, what can I do? Or anything like that. There's really been no communication that's very specific to Insperity and their relationship with us.
You know, exactly that. Just not,
Yeah.
We haven't gotten anything from our universities just saying, how are you doing? What's going on? What's the status of your internship program?
Okay. Yeah. So here's a really quick news update. Since it just came out, the U.S. House of Representatives just approved the $2 trillion rescue plan. So it should be signed into law by Trump later today. So that's just an FYI for everybody. So we had a question from a couple of attendees about students, and this is the last one I'm going to do about the beginning of the process, because we have some other questions about sort of how do you then go to remote and how do you change some things around. But they asked about what should students communicate, how should students communicate with employers if they're in the middle of that process? They've been through the interviewing process and they didn't get an offer yet, but they don't know where it stands. Similarly to that goes on the career service side, that's part of it, is also, you know, for graduation, a lot of these students, and some of you guys know because of your kids, and I do as well, that they actually for graduation sometimes need to have a co-op or an internship. And what are the schools going to be doing about that if those things don't come to fruition this summer for some of those students that would graduate next year?
Well, actually, if I could just kind of jump in here, Faith, at Regis College, every one of our students is required to do an internship or they don't graduate. So yes, Susan Kennedy has been nervous because we don't know a lot of the moving pieces. I am reaching out to every student, and I get that. Thus far, for the spring anyway, we were able to get all of them to either finish up remotely, because we give academic credit for internships. If they couldn't finish up remotely, we gave them more professional development activities to make up for any shortfall in the hours worked. I am a little concerned, you know, but particularly about our STEM students, because those programs run in the summer and they're big. But some of the things that we're going to be doing is we're reaching out to our alums to see if they can host an intern, whether it's, you know, in person, whether
Oh, Susan, we're having a little trouble.
virtual. And Regis was lucky enough, a little over a year, to get a pretty large grant to offset, you know, to provide stipends for unpaid internships. So I'm hoping that's going to help us.
Okay, great. How about, Jill, do you guys have any internships that aren't filled yet, or have you filled out?
Yeah, actually, we're still making some offers on a couple of positions. And my advice to someone in that process wouldn't be different than anybody else who's looking for a job right now. You know, and there's no harm in reaching out to your recruiter or the person that you're working with in the organization. That's okay. You can do that whether you're applying for an internship or applying for a full-time regular job, right? You know, again, be understanding if they don't know anything in the moment, take their word that they don't know anything for the moment, but there's no rule that says that you can't call your recruiter.
Right.
You know, so if you would be so inclined, if you feel like you need to, then go ahead. There's no problem with that.
Yeah, I usually encourage be persistent but patient.
Yeah.
Because we just don't have the answers right now. But I have found that the students who follow up on interviews and applications inevitably get hired pretty quickly.
Right. I will tell you that my bent is always towards those people who have been more communicative with me, more interested, you know. I mean, it just shows that they take those extra steps. So, you know, stand out in a crowd and try to do different things, but understanding that, you know, we're also getting phone calls. You know, we have hundreds of openings, not just the internships, but other jobs as well. So we're a little in the overload category right now. So a little patience with our responses, maybe in order, but reach out, be that one.
And this is a place where career services can, I think, really add some help to the students and make sure that they are reaching out proactively. And I would say the mantra I would give folks is to assume positive intent. Assume that employers are doing their very best to get back to you as quickly as possible with all the information that they can, and approach it with that in mind.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so moving on, thank you guys, this is great. Moving on to, so you're not going to rescind your internships. You're going to try to have them. You're trying to figure out how you want to do them. They most likely have to be remote, given COVID. So COVID-19. So if they're going to work remotely, how do you manage them? Have you thought about how to sort of move, which programs you can move sort of into projects and micro projects for micro internships, so that there's opportunities for them to connect with your company? And it is different to manage remote people. At College Recruiter, we have a virtual company. Everybody works remotely. I've managed the staff, and over the years, I've really learned to change the way I manage, from having been in large corporations and managing teams in the office to managing people remotely. It's much more based on outcomes. So that's one of the key factors. But what are you guys thinking about, Kristen and Jill, about those internships? And then Robert, I know you have some of them, so.
Well, the question as you were reading it, the image that popped into my mind was that scene from Apollo 13, where the engineers walk into the room and they've got this square air filter, and they say, we've got to fit this square thing into this round thing using only the things that we have in front of us. And they brought 3 astronauts back to Earth alive, doing just that. And I think that we are in somewhat the same moment. We've got to fit what we've normally done into this new thing using only the things that we have in front of us. But the good news is everything that we need is right there. And if we think about what an internship is, and it's this balanced experience of, what do we want them to learn and know about our company, our industry, our culture? And the second is, what type of professional development skills do we want to develop so that they can be successful in the long term here? And then that third leg of the stool is the actual work that they're doing. And I think that if we get back to those basics and we think about those 3 items, the rest kind of falls into place, because we can say, we can use, Zoom, we can use GoToMeeting, we can use Slack, we can use some of the tools that we already have in front of us and that we're already using, but just repurpose them into this. So we will, I think, if we just take that step back and realize that we probably have all the tools that we need, we just need to rethink how we use them. And again, crisis is a great, mother of innovation.
Mhm.
For us, a lot of what I do is working with our hiring managers and kind of educating them and coaching them internally on how to manage our intern class and how to work with interns, because a lot of them have never worked with interns before. So instead of saying things like, you should check in with your intern more frequently, we're putting down some kind of hard, like, you should check in with your intern twice a week. And then you should assign a proactive mentor within your team. And that mentor should also check in with the intern twice a week. Why don't you take your team and then on a rotating schedule, so they get to know the whole team collectively, why don't you have them check in with the intern once a week? So you have 5 days a week where that intern has a touch base from the team so that they can know how the project is going, what kind of progress has been made, what resources maybe they're having trouble with or they need, where they could use some coaching. So they're still getting a lot of interaction from that team, but we're not leaving ambiguity out there for our hiring managers. We're making sure that we put some like concrete expectations on them of communication cadence.
Even more important with remote, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Like if they were in office, they'd have that opportunity to like swivel their chair around and just ask a question. They don't have that. And a lot of them, especially in the world of like computer science and engineering, are a little bit more introverted. So we don't want to make the onus completely on the intern. We want to share that responsibility within the team. So coaching with our hiring managers on how to interact with these college students. And then also just being like authentic and talking to the interns about how it's going to be a different format, but they're going to get kick-ass technology. They're going to meet amazing people, and then they're going to walk away with a skill set that's going to like outpace all their peers. And so they're still going to get those things. It's just going to be in a different package.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great.
Yeah. And we're kind of in the same boat, but we're still debating: are we going to be live? Are we going to be remote? And one of the internship programs is a rotational program, and it's a little bit less about the work product that the intern provides, but it's more about them learning just the overall, like, what is HR and what are all the different areas of HR that you could pursue, or IT, what are the different areas that you could pursue? So they get a look-see at a lot of things, but they don't take a deep dive into any one thing. Our deep dive internships are a different thing, but with this rotational, it's very curriculum based, right? Like we want to make sure that they're going through everything, but there's some tools that we can use. We're just trying to see how fast can we use them to build, like using the RISE platform. So a lot of it is a little bit self-directed by the intern. And at the end of the day, when we were talking about it just the other day in the office, I'm like, this may be the way that we all start working, right? I've worked remote for a while, but I can guarantee you that with everybody now working remote, there's going to be some people who don't come back to the office after this. Like, this is going to change the game for a lot of people. So are we also teaching these interns those skills about how you manage yourself? I know they have to do some schoolwork and that sort of thing, but how do they manage themselves as professionals in a remote environment? So they can gain that extra piece that I think is a bonus right now. So, figure out the technologies and all that to make it work.
Yeah.
Kristen mentioned kind of the clarity for managers, which I think is awesome, particularly in this newly virtual environment. And I think about these managers, perhaps who haven't managed folks before and haven't managed virtually. That is a lot to put on their shoulders. And so what organizations can do is making sure that they know how to take care of their own needs as managers, so that, we talk about it as charging their batteries, so that when they're going into those interactions, not only do they have the guidelines about when to reach out, but they're also taking care of themselves, so they get to bring the best to each of those interactions. And that not only helps them in terms of become better managers, but also create a better outcome for the summer internship.
And actually, Intern Bridge is going to be hosting a webcast next Thursday specifically focused on flipping that traditional kind of live internship that we've been doing for so long into a virtual experience, and hitting on many of the things that we talked about here, but being very tactical about it so that when attendees leave, they will say, oh, you know what, I can do this. I know how, I love the input that Kristen had about the how important it is to get those who are leading the team commitment and making sure that they understand what's going on. And this isn't same old, and we have to communicate more. And it's not, and we have to be very prescriptive about the type of experience we want them, the student, to have while they're with us, because that experience is going to be different. It's not that it's less valuable, it's just different.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that information, Robert. And I was going to mention that you were having that webinar because I think it's great. It's a nice next step for some of the employers out there who are struggling to figure out what how they're going to move to a remote environment. And I think that white paper was another good resource. But where would they go, Robert, to sign up for your course? Just to internbridge.com.
Yeah, the web link is internbridge.com/virtual-internships.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Then moving on, we've got about 5 minutes, and then we're going to have to kind of wrap it up. But I guess there's so many different questions. We're not going to be able to cover everything, but we started to talk a little bit about what kind of tools you can use, and I think that's going to be critical to the tactical. How do we change from how do we change some of our internships to remote? Does anybody have certain platforms or suggestions that they think would be a great place to start looking at?
I think the best thing to do is look at what you already have. And again, trying to fit that square peg into a round hole. I mean, we all have communication tools, be it instant messaging, Microsoft Teams, Slack, FaceTime, Zoom, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar. Look at those things and say, okay, how can we use what we have to deliver an experience? And when I think that's going to make it a whole lot easier, and at least for employers to be able to say, okay, well, we do have the tools, we just need to use them differently.
Yeah.
And when I reflect on having led internships, the value there is the ability not only to do the work, but to meet different people in the organization. And so the more that you can integrate this into the tools that people are already using, the easier it will be for those senior to engage with the interns virtually.
Yeah.
So kind of on the flip side, not so much on like the delivery of projects and learning and things like that. We are trying to mirror like the actual internship program that we'd have. So we have like social events and icebreakers and like all of the fun things that are incorporated in an internship program. So we're looking at things like there's a virtual escape room that interns can do. You can use to do games with your interns, use gamification to like help engage them. So one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now is just how to keep your interns engaged, because distance learning does not work for every single student out there. My son is a freshman at Washington State University. He does not like distance learning classes. So how do we keep interns engaged? How do we keep it fun? How do we keep like the New Relic culture permeated throughout the internship? So we're looking at different platforms where interns can have fun as well as like get to know different people. We're going to do a scavenger hunt that is meet people in the office, and it's all based on like their Workday profiles or LinkedIn profiles, maybe like blogs that they've written on our intranet, and they have to go and find these people and then come back and we'll send them a prize or something later.
Getting creative. I love it.
Those are great ideas.
Awesome. All right. Well, I hate to say this, but we've got 5 minutes. And so I would love it if everybody, if you could answer one question It's a quick kind of one sentence thing, but if you were advising an employer and could only give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, wait, I want to go last because I am an employer and I want to hear what the advice is.
Don't cancel your internship. Innovate.
My advice would be to follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would want others to do to you, and follow that throughout.
And I guess my final suggestion to employers would be, again, the concept of transparency. Pick up the phone, even if you don't have any update, let them know you're thinking of them and you have your best interests at heart.
I would encourage folks to connect with their career offices, the university career offices, and in particular, alumni career offices. So from the alma mater of those folks who are currently on your teams, connect with them. Your alumni can be really powerful advocates for your brand at institutions, but also just to help you stay connected with the current students and with the culture of that institution.
Great.
I think my piece would capitalize on that connectedness. And there's a lot of people doing some really cool things and innovative things. So you're not alone. So use your resources to mimic what other people are doing. If you don't think that when Kristen was saying those things, I wasn't taking fast and furious notes. But you leverage that, leverage your other companies that and what you can find out on the internet and collaborate with other people to see what they're doing and see if you can't borrow some ideas.
And Faith, I know that there was a lot of questions that you mentioned that had come in. If there is a way that you could put those questions into a Google Doc or something, I mean, I would.
Yeah, you're stealing my thunder, Robert.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just teasing.
I'm sorry.
I'm just teasing, but that is exactly what we were going to say because.
Okay.
So I would like people to email the questions to me, faith@collegerecruiter.com, and we will collect those questions because there have been so many on the YouTube chat. A lot of great questions we didn't get to, and we will find a way to share that with people. One of the ways that we do that is we put out information on our blog, then we end up sending our blog out through our social channels. So FaceTime, LinkedIn, so look for College Recruiter to follow, because then we can continue some of these conversations there as well.
And if we wanted to do this again, I would totally be open to this. What a great venue. Just a wealth of information. Thank you very much for hosting this.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. And maybe we'll think about doing a follow-up. It's we got to only probably about half of what it would have been nice to be able to cover for everybody. So until next time, maybe. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Whew. We're doing okay.